Microsoft Excel, then this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to show you 10 Excel shortcuts that are going to save you time, and I mean a lot of time. Make sure to stick around all the way to the end for a bonus tip, as well as another special bonus that'll help you speed through Microsoft Excel. Hey, I'm Ashley, and welcome to Learning Obsessed. We post weekly videos to help you get higher grades, get the job you want, and get promoted faster. But do it all faster and more efficiently, so you have more time to do the other stuff in your life that you care about. Okay, let's get to it. So this is one of those classic why bother type scenarios. You can do these actions with a mouse, so why would you bother spending the time learning keyboard shortcuts? Okay, let me pause here real quick, and for all of you that are already convinced about keyboard shortcuts, click ahead to wherever the timestamp is over here, and you can skip on right ahead to the shortcuts. Still here? Okay, so you need a little convincing. I was a skeptic at first as well, or maybe more like I hadn't really thought about it. I think we'd all agree that if our hands are on the keyboard, simply hitting Control-B to bold something is quicker than moving your hand to the mouse, then moving the cursor to the bold button on the ribbon. If we do these keyboard shortcuts with all the actions we're going to take in Excel, for sure we're going to save time. But how much? I didn't really have a good answer, so I decided to do a little experiment where I grabbed an image of a table from Google Images and then tried to replicate it using only the keyboard, and then again with the mouse and no keyboard shortcuts. Of course, the mouse was a slower version. The winner was the keyboard, which saved 35 seconds or so. But that was for a task that took about 3 minutes in total. Now, this doesn't sound like all that much, but multiply this by the frequency you're going to be using the shortcuts. It is going to add up to a lot of time, hours, and eventually days of time you're going to get back by using these keyboard shortcuts. In fact, if you use Excel 1 hour a day, which by the way is nothing for people in many industries, that tiny 35 seconds of saved time translates to about 11.5 minutes per day, or a little under 1 hour per week, 46 hours per year. That's nearly 6 working days per year. Now, sadly, your boss is probably not going to give you an extra week off per year if you learn Excel shortcuts. But think about how much more you could do if you had an extra week of work per year compared to your peers. Okay, let's jump right in.
I'm going to show you F4. F4 does two things. One is it makes a relative reference into an absolute reference. And the second thing it does is repeats the previous action. So let me start out with the making absolute cell reference absolute. So I'm going to link to this cell here. And again, we're going to try and do as much as we can with shortcuts. Some of the shortcuts, I don't want to use them until I've shown you them because it kind of feels a little like I'm cheating. So I'm only going to use the shortcuts after I've shown them to you. Okay, so here we have the price for product one. I have a number down at the bottom, $300 for product one. So I made up all of them. I think I mentioned I made all this stuff up. None of this data is real. I made it up for illustrative purposes. So if we were to take this and try and copy it, okay, we're going to copy it and paste. If we were to do that, what would happen is, see how here the cell reference is to H26, or I think I used a shortcut just out of habit there. But if you look here up at the formula bar, you see it's referring to cell H26. Okay, so that's right. But when we copied it down, it also moved the referential cell down. So obviously we want to avoid this. So let me show you a couple of things. So first off, let's delete both of those. And I'm going to put my link to cell H26, but I'm now going to press F4, and that's going to be that cell reference absolute. So I hit enter. When I copy that one down to the next cell below it, copy and paste, voila, it keeps the same reference. It doesn't move down to cell H27 like it did in the previous example. So now we can copy that all the way down here, and we can do paste, and there we go, and it all got pasted down, and it got pasted down appropriately. So I showed you this instance just now where when we first set up the link, we made it absolute. Now I'm going to show you if you want to change the link afterwards. So let's say we're looking for a product for the price for product number 2. That's an H27. So now I go go copy, and let's say I'm not really I missed or I didn't pay attention, didn't notice that I had made the reference relative. I'll go up here just to do something different. I'll go here and I'll press paste, and lo and behold, none of those links work. So that doesn't work. So let me get rid of these. Press delete and they're gone. But now you've made this mistake, or you want to change something after the fact. So what you can do is you can go into the cell and then edit it, press F4, and there you go. So it makes an absolute cell reference. So notice here that if I press it a second time, it's the dollar signs that makes something absolute. I think that you may or may not know that, but that's what the designation for making something an absolute reference is. So now the only thing absolute is the row number, but the column is dynamic, or is relative, I guess I should say. So you have a relative column reference and an absolute row reference. Now if I press F4 once again, we see it shifts over. So the column is now absolute and the row is relative. And then if I hit it another time, it all goes away. So there's no, in this case, no absolute cell references. So now I'm going to hit it one more time. Really, as you can see, it cycles through. So now the whole thing is absolute, which is what we wanted. Hit enter. And we can copy that and paste it. And voila. So now we see the numbers populating here. So let me show you how to do something, the repeating of the previous action. So let's say we went over here and we wanted to total up the number of units sold, the revenue, the number of product 2 units sold, and then the revenue from product 2, and then the total revenue. So what we're going to do here is let's put a border along the bottom. You see that's there. So now I go over to here where I also want a border along the bottom, so it shows that we're summing up. I press F4, and there we go. We've got a border along the bottom, and do the same thing here, here, and here. And now we have the nice little formatting change that was actually very little effort. And what it did is it definitely saved us some time, right? Because that's the whole, you want to make sure we don't lose sight. The whole point of this is to save time. So that's F4. This is the next one I'm going to show you is one that many people will know, copy and paste using the keyboard. Again, the shortcuts. Let's do this. I'm going to delete these, and I'm going to use this for my example of copy and paste. So using the keyboard shortcut for copy is Control C, and the keyboard shortcut for paste is Control V. So I'm going to highlight that whole area, and then I'm going to press Control V, and it gets pasted in. So that's a useful thing. We're going to get into cutting as well, actually. Let me show you how to do that. So the key thing with cutting and pasting is if you cut and paste, it maintains any references to that cell. So for example, let's say I were to go Control X, which is cut, and move it over, and I press Control V to paste, what we'll see is, if you go back here, now it's referring to J26. So it was H26 before when it was over here, but now the reference has updated to be J26. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut and paste, Control X, Control V, and we'll go here, and we now see the reference once again to H26. And that's essentially cutting and pasting. Next thing I want to show you is F2, which enables you to jump into the formula bar to edit a cell. So let's pick something here. Why don't we go to, let's go down to this one here. So let's say I realized, it's actually not 300, it's 350. So I could just type in over that, but for our purposes, what I'm going to do is I pressed F2, and then I'll use the arrow key to move within here, and I'm going to edit that, delete, and 350. So you see the formula, which links to there, updates everything. So that's quite convenient. The other thing is F2 can be used when you're within a cell. So let's say I hit F2, I can't use the arrow keys to move to adjacent cells. I'm sort of stuck, if you will, editing within the cell. But let's say I wanted to, instead 350, I wanted to say, well, let me make that equal to 500. So I'll put equals, and then I hit F2, and that enabled me to now move outside of the cell. Hit enter, and that updates the cell. So that was a bit opaque. Maybe that wasn't totally clear. Let me try that one more time real quick. So F2 lets you get into the cell to edit it, but I'm using the side arrow keys and it's not letting me move out of the cell. It's letting me move within the cell, but it's not letting me change or make any cell reference to something outside of the cell. So let's delete this. We'll say equals, and then again, I'm still stuck here, but now I press F2 and I can move to different cells to use them as references. I'm going to refer to this blank cell, which will make everything 0, but then I'll update that with 300, and we're back where we were in the first place. So let me fix that. Okay, we'll delete that, and then we're back to where we started. But what we've done is we've now done the shown you the F2 key to get into the cell and to edit the cell, and that's again to be able to avoid using the mouse. One other quick one, but super useful, is using Control plus the arrow key to get to the end of a sequence of numbers. I'm at the bottom here, I'm in cell J22, but let's say I want to go to the top of this column. Great way to go is I press Control, up arrow, and it takes me right to the top. Down arrow to the bottom, up arrow to the top, and so forth. If you have a bunch of empty cells adjacent to you, and I'm going to go Control up arrow, that'll take you up to the previous, or to the first number that it sees, or the first cell that has something in it. So I'm pressing Control up arrow, and that gets me here. Now, if I were to press Control down arrow, it would stop me at the first cell that's filled in. However, there is no cell filled in, so the Control down arrow is taking me right to the bottom of that spreadsheet, or the bottom of the worksheet rather. So now I'll go back up, keep hitting up arrow. So this is a super, super helpful thing because it enables you to move much, much more quickly through things. So let's say I accidentally deleted this and I wanted to get back to putting in cell H26. All I have to do is hit the arrow key, move over 2, and then hit Control down arrow, and we're back where we wanted, back with the correct reference. I'll hit absolute F4 for the absolute references, and away we go. So that is a really, really convenient thing. It is so easy to move quickly through a spreadsheet. I would really, really encourage you to become very familiar with this. The other thing that's very useful is Shift arrow key. And what that does is it highlights a range of cells. So I'm using Shift and down arrow now. If I were to go Shift right arrow, that would highlight whatever's to the right. If I continue, I'm going to keep going till the end here. So that in and of itself is convenient. But when you combine that with the Control plus the arrow key, so Control Shift arrow key, it becomes very powerful. So now I'm going to go Control Shift down and then Control Shift to the right, and it goes all the way to the end of the area that the original cell I started in goes until. What I mean by that, let's say, let me delete this for the moment, okay? So I'm going to hit Control Shift down arrow and Control Shift right arrow. You'll notice it only goes up to column N because I deleted what was in column O in that first row. So the cell I started in, I can only go until the end of that one. Okay, so that's, hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to copy and paste, and then I'll pick that back up. Okay, so 5 more to go. Hopefully you're finding this helpful, and if you are, please like and subscribe to the channel. That's going to help us make more content that can be valuable to you. And also make sure to stick around to the end where I'll have something to offer you that hopefully you're going to find valuable and useful. So let's keep going here. Very useful. I use it regularly is the undo button. So there is actually, funny enough, I don't actually know exactly where it is up on the ribbon here because I never use it with my mouse. So there is an undo button that exists somewhere. I probably just haven't added it to the ribbon. There's probably a way to add it. But the way I do it is I use Control Z. Control Z undoes your previous action. So you can, and then you can repeat this. You can continue going along. So I'm going to undo, undo, and keep going. Sometimes you're going to undo too far and you'll realize, shoot, I didn't really want to go that far. The way you do that, the way you sort of fix that is Control Y. Control Y is redo previous function. So now I'm hitting Control Y, and that's going to take us all the way through to there where I said, oops, I deleted that or I deleted that to make the point in the last shortcut, and now we have redone everything back up to where we were before. That is undo and redo. The next thing I want to show you is paste special. There's a couple of ways with the mouse. I much prefer using the keyboard. Let's say, for argument's sake, I wanted to copy these calculations. So what I could do is I could go Control C, go over here somewhere and hit Control V. And maybe I might want to do this to see, okay, well, let's say if I change the price to 700, what would happen then? Oh, okay, I see. That's what the revenue would be. Let's say I wanted to change the number of units to 200. Okay, well, that's what the revenue would have been. Well, I probably could have worked that out in my head. But let's just say this is what you're trying to find. So notice what we've done. We've copied the formulas here. We've copied the numbers. And we've copied the formatting. And let me hit Control Z a couple of times to get back to where we started. So that's where we started. But so what we've done is we've copied the numbers themselves. We've copied the formatting of the numbers. There's no formatting on this one. There's a dollar sign on this one, and again, dollar sign on this one. And we've copied the formula that we have here. So this formula, if I hit F2, it'll highlight what the lead-up cell, or the cells that calculate to make it for the formula. We see that that formula came across as well. So here's where it's interesting. Now I'm going to see what paste special looks like. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit Alt E S. And that's the shortcut for paste special. So if you see here, there's a whole variety of options you have available to you. There's pasting just formulas, pasting just values, pasting just formats, pasting comments. I wouldn't use don't use it too much. Validation, I don't use it too much. Using source theme, again, not too much. Everything except borders, that's one that I'll use sometimes. Formulas and number formats, and values and number formats. Those are ones that I'll use periodically. So let's just see what formulas look like. So formulas, what we see here is it keeps the formula here and keeps the formula here because that's a cell reference is equals to something. And it keeps the raw number here. So formulas copies the formula itself and any numbers that are hard-coded in. Let's do the next one with something different. So you'll notice also, by the way, you'll notice that there's no formatting here, right? So there's no dollar signs here. We just pasted formulas with no formatting. Okay, let's try the next one. I'll show you what that looks like. Alt-ES. So now let's go values. I think you'll probably be able to work out what this is. It is just the actual values themselves. So if I were to change that to 200, nothing would change because there's no formula calculating that. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. So here we have the values that were pasted, but not the formulas itself and not the formatting. Here's where that's useful. Well, there's a bunch of ways it's useful. One of the ones that I'll use it for sometimes is when I'm combining dates. So let's say this is kind of used to sort of speed things along. Let's say I've got 2020, whoops, and I'm going to say I'd like to have all of the months in 2020. Just going to whip through this. Anyway, I think you get the idea. So let's say I want to put those together, but I don't want to sort of, because there's maybe a bigger list of them, I want to type them out individually and be able to combine them. So what I can do is I can go January and maybe I'll put a space in there. So I'll put a space and 2020. So now I've got this text here, and it would have seen if I continued along down with the rest of the months. So that's one quick shortcut that I'll use. Think of the possibilities where you might want to use that. But here's where the paste values comes in. So I hit Control C, and I'd go Alt E S, And V for values, if you'll notice the letters that are underlined are what the shortcut is to use it. I've got press V for values, and now I put that in there. And then we've got the values pasted there. Notice though that it's no longer dependent on what we had before. So let's say I delete these guys. Well, that messes up my one where I have the AND function, but it doesn't mess up my newly created month and year. So there's a lot of different applications for this. I can do another video with a little more detail and a little more ideas on places you'll use this and ways you can keep going with shortcuts on this. So let me delete that now, and we'll get back to the sort of original stuff I was talking about in the video. So let's go back here. We're going to do Control C, Alt ES. In this case, we're just going to put formats. I think you're getting the idea here. No numbers, but formats are in here. So let's say I go 500 or 50,014. That will show up with the number of formats that were there in place originally. And that's pretty much it for this one there. It's pretty straightforward. Try to find out which ones you use regularly, and then you've got now the keyboard shortcut that'll speed you along. So Alt E. Oh, I haven't shown you this yet, have I? So I have shown, whoops. Okay, I'll do it this way. So Control Shift down a couple times all the way over. Then I'm going, because I'm in an empty cell to start with, if I were to go Control Shift right, I would go all the way to the end of the worksheet. So I'm now actually only holding Shift, right arrow, and then I'll delete this. Next, at number 8, I want to show you a really nice shortcut for summing. Remember how I put these borders here earlier on? There was a good reason for that. I'm going to show you a shortcut for summing. It's Alt equal sign. So Alt equal sign, and it's going to sum everything above it. There we go. There's a little bit of a trick to this one, and that is that it will only sum contiguous cells. So let's say I delete this guy here, right? And then I go down to the bottom, and I go Alt equal sign. Notice now it's only summing up the ones from the bottom up until the cell that I deleted. Shift Control lets you select the area to highlight, or to include in the summation. Let me undo now, and I'll bring that back in there. So Alt sum gets you all the way there, or Alt equal sign gets you the summation for everything above it. And there we go. We can do the same thing here. In fact, I'll do F4 to something I showed you earlier, redo previous action. I guess actually doesn't work in that circumstance. So Alt equals, we'll do it a couple more times. Alt equals, and there we go. Okay, so we're getting almost there. Number 9, and how to move between worksheets very, very quickly using the keyboard. And this is going to save you a lot of time too, as you're working with spreadsheets that have multiple worksheets where you have to look at data. It's going to save you a lot of time. So the way you do it is Control, page down. You keep going. Notice on the bottom left over here. Oops, notice on the bottom left over here, we've got a series of worksheets which I made. They're empty, but you can see as I press Control, page down, it takes you down there. And down in this case means to the right, and I'm about to hit Control, page up. That'll take us to the left. And keep going until I get back to where we originally started. So that's tip number 9. Tip number 10, let's say you think, it would be nice if I had a little bit of space in here, a little bit of room between where we have the salesperson data and the unit data. So what I want to do is I want to insert a row here. So what I would do is I could go with the mouse and right click over here and go to insert. I could do that. But because I don't want to use the mouse, I'm going to go Control Spacebar. So Control Spacebar highlights a column. So I'm hitting Control Spacebar a few times here, and now what I'll do is there's a keyboard shortcut. I'll probably show you at another point. You press Alt I E to insert a row, and I'll do that one more time. So over here, to insert a column. Sorry, that was a column. Alt-I-E is to insert. It's actually insert whatever area is highlighted. So I'd highlighted a column. It inserted a column. I'll show you in a moment if I highlight a row, it'll insert a row. So here I'm going to column one more time. So Control Spacebar selects an entire column. Alt-I-E inserts whatever the shape of the highlighted area is. So here we go, I inserted the column there. Let's say now I wanted to split up the salespeople into people who had achieved their target and people who didn't. That's how this sort was done originally. So what I would do is shift spacebar, highlights or select, same thing, an entire row. So I'm now going to go Alt-I-E, and that inserts a row there. You'll notice whichever row I am on is pushed down, and a row is inserted above that row, okay? Whichever row I'm on is pushed down, and a row above that is inserted. So let's do this. Let's undo all that. And as you saw there, when I hit Alt-I-E, it inserted cells in the same shape and the same configuration as what I had originally. So let me real quick touch on something that I think is a really useful, really helpful thing that speeds you along a lot: cell formatting. So there's a whole lot of formatting you can do in a cell, everything from number formatting to borders to colors, all those things. The way you access that all with the keyboard rather is Control-1. So when I hit Control-1, it opens up the format cells window, and I can do all sorts of things here. We'll get into more of this in more detail in another video. This one's running a little bit long, but if you move to the right, for example, I'm looking at alignment here, move to the right, use the right arrow again, font, border, fill, protection, etc. So I'm going to hit escape, but go ahead and play around with this. This is super useful. The key function, the key keyboard shortcuts here are use the right and left arrow keys to move sideways, use tab to move to the next category. So tab, I was on number. If you can see here, I'm on number. I now hit tab and I'm on category. And then I hit tab again, I'm over on decimal places, tab again symbol, tab again to what to do with negative numbers, and then tab again brings me down to OK. So I'm going to hit escape, and we're back to the original spreadsheet. So that's 10 plus a bonus.
Thanks so much for watching. Really hope you found that helpful. As promised, make sure you click on the description below and you'll see a link to a list of our favorite keyboard shortcuts, some of the shortcuts that have saved us unbelievable amounts of time over the years. We loved having you here. Don't forget to comment below and let us know which one you thought was the most useful, what are your favorite keyboard shortcuts, or even what you'd like to see us make videos of next. Thanks again. Look forward to seeing you again soon.